Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Faith and Leadership Unplugged. I'm Dustin Williams, and today I am so excited to have my special guest, Matt Voss, who is a dear friend of mine. In fact, Matt Voss is the reason why I stepped into full-time ministry. His example, his encouragement, and faithfulness helped shape the leader I am today. Currently serving as the worship pastor at Victory Life Church, Matt carries a deep love for God's presence and a heart that stays steadfast, especially in difficult seasons. Today, we're diving into a powerful conversation around what happens when God calls you into hardship. Matt's story will challenge and encourage you, and I know you're going to be blessed by this conversation. So let's dive in. I mean, we have known each other for, it feels like my whole life, but it's been over 20 years. I mean, 23 years, and you have not only gotten to see, me get married and start a family, but I've also got to see your kids grow up. And at times we have ministered together over the years. You came to the church I was attending at the time, First Assembly of God in Grand Junction, as the youth pastor. And that's where I met you. And, at first I was like, I don't know who this guy is, but there's something that you saw inside of me that I had really been running from for a long time. And that was the call of God in my life. And you challenged me, and you took me in under your wing, and you began to mentor me in ministry. And so it's just an honor to have you, and thank you for everything that you've poured in, not only to my life, but my wife's life, my kids. You're such a good friend. Thank you so much.
It's good to be here. It's good to chat with you and talk about old times. I remember coming to, it was First Assembly Grand Junction at the time. It's now transitioned to Victory Life Church. And I was friends with your youth pastor, Brian Roush, and they had just gone through some major craziness in the youth group. And I don't know if you've ever shared that on any of your podcasts, but I know you guys went through some heartbreaking situations there at the youth group, some upheaval. And I was talking to Brian at one of our kind of minister retreats that we have, and he was up in the balcony, and he was just so depressed and upset. And I was like, "Hey, Brian, what's going on?" So I go, "Man, my youth group." He's just started breaking down and crying. And I remember his exact words because it echoed in my ears a few months later as I took the youth group over. He said, "I wouldn't wish my situation or this youth group on my worst enemy."
Wow.
And little did I know that God was going to transition me in a rather dramatic fashion from my church to come to Grand Junction. But
that's amazing.
I think my first night there was if I remember right, there was 10 kids, and the youth sponsors that we had there, the leaders, were almost as many as the kids in the room. So that's how devastated it was, because I think you guys were running over 100, right? When you guys were up.
and I haven't actually talked about this part of my story. Of course, I did a book last year, and towards the end of the book, I opened up a little bit about that. But yeah, it was a large youth ministry that seemed to be trending in the right direction. We had experienced revival and really had grown in depth, I feel.
It was kind of on the coattails of the Brownsville stuff, right? Is that kind of where your church was trending, if I remember?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the church as a whole, yes. The youth ministry, we had actually experienced revival out of a couple different places. With one place was Revival Center in Seattle, Washington, which this is how cool God is. I went there as a teenager. We experienced incredible revival there, and now a friend of mine, who was the son of the pastor who's since gone on to be with the Lord, he's the pastor of the church now. And years later, I connect with him. It's crazy. And then there was another group called Hellfighter that came through our town. And I mean, uh, our youth were ignited. So Brownsville a little bit, but there were some other
Okay.
experiences there. But you brought up a good point, because sometimes as a leader you have to step into situations that are not ideal. And I know you look at it as, man, my friend Brian was going through this, and he told me he wouldn't wish this on his worst enemy, and yet you didn't see it at the time, but God was calling you and nudging you to
Yeah.
be the guy to step in. Um, Knowing that the situation you were going to was not ideal, how, as a leader, how did you handle that?
Oh my goodness. Well, I was coming from a brokenhearted situation because at my church, the church I was serving at, to give you some context, the words of Jesus ring true that a prophet doesn't have any respect in his hometown, basically.
Yeah.
And the church I was serving at, I followed actually my mentor there at the youth ministry, and it was my home church. And so I think everybody kind of looked at me as, oh, it's little Matt, and isn't that cute that he's trying to be a pastor now? And my ministry never really had any kind of legitimacy there, I guess. And I had got ignited with kind of a new vision. I was kind of floundering about, and there was this new way of reaching out to kids beyond the church. Because when I grew up in youth ministry was like, okay, just shepherd the kids that are in the church. And then there was this youth ministry that ignited at the tail end of the 90s and the early 2000s out of Tulsa, Church on the Move. It was a youth group called 180. And their approach was to like cast a wide net, like learn how to be fishers of the audience that you want to reach. And so they were like, why can't the coolest place in town be the local youth ministry? Like, where all the teenagers want to hang out, why can't we make it to where, hey, we've got great, video games, you got a snack bar, like everything you'd find at like a, I don't know, I'm going to be dating myself by saying this reference, like a skating rink or an arcade.
I thought you were going to say Pizza Hut, and I was like, that's really
Pizza
dating
Hut.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Pac-Man
But
back in the day.
yeah, so their approach was all that. So I was on fire for that. So I came back with this vision at my home church, and I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. And the board just kind of shut me down. They were like, no, you're not the guy for it. And I was devastated. And I remember my lead pastor talking to me, and he said, hey, I really don't think that you've got much of a future here, because it just looks like the board's not going to back you at all. But
Yeah.
a friend of mine down in Grand Junction, he's looking for a youth pastor because they're making a transition. Would you be interested in that? And so actually, when I came down to youth camp, which is very close to Grand Junction, I broke away for an afternoon and I interviewed at the church. And so I came in heartbroken, and the youth group was heartbroken. And I think it was kind of just this perfect marriage that God knew that I needed that youth group for healing, and that youth group needed me also for healing. And I just kind of looked at it like, yeah, these kids have been devastated just like I've been devastated. I'm just gonna come in here and love on them and try to start doing some of the concepts that I learned at Church on the Move,
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and it certainly worked. It wasn't overnight, but you were able to kind of transition this youth ministry, and yeah, it was a process. It took a little bit, but after a couple years, the Lord really blessed what you were doing there, and it exploded. And looking back now and seeing how many of your former students, I call them our students because I was your
Yeah,
intern and I got to serve with you. But looking back on that,
you
seeing how
definitely had an
many,
impact on them too.
oh,
Don't think it was all just me.
yeah, I know. I was kind of like the fun uncle though, like I got to be the fun guy, and so,
That is
but
true. You didn't have to do any discipline.
right. I didn't see the bad parts of it. I didn't have to deal with, meetings or parents or anything like that where you did. Um, but so many of those kids are in ministry now. So many of them love the Lord still. And it just, that's really what it's all about because, you can have a youth ministry that has games. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You can have a fun place. I think church should be a fun place, personally, but really it cultivated deeper relationships with one another. And when you look at the fruit, even 20 years down the road now, it's still there. It's still there because,
Yeah.
yes, it got kids in the door, but kids were transformed and set on fire for Jesus. And so it's just amazing. But as in leadership, sometimes we don't always see that far down the road. It's very easy to be short-sighted with issues and problems that come up, and it could have been very easy for you to come into this situation and be like, man, this is a mess, I'm a mess. um, let's just kind of get through this, and then when something opens up that's better, you know that's the Lord. The Lord is
Yeah.
opening up something better. So, and Jesus, he never promised us to have an easy life. He in fact told us that we're going to have many troubles. We're going to have many situations that we have to face, that we have to overcome, so to speak. And so, I just commend you for overcoming and sticking with it. And what's cool about your journey is you were there that many years ago. You transitioned, um, and I transitioned, and then we meet
Yeah.
each other at another church on staff together in Salt Lake City called Life Church, where we both serve together again. So um,
Yeah.
the Lord's just been gracious to us. We've just had opportunities to be together and do life together, and so and now you find yourself back at that same church. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about what you're doing now and what your role is there now.
Well, I'm the worship pastor now. I mean, my journey, at all the places that I've served. I've basically held every role, even at Grand Junction when they made a transition with the kids pastor. I was the kids pastor for a month there, and doing youth. So I can actually say, yes, I've been a kids pastor,
Yeah.
even though that was not my calling at all. But I've actually held every position there was except for worship leader. I've been an interim worship pastor because I've always had that in my past. I've always played music and led worship, but it's never been anything I've been paid to do as my main thing. And so now I'm paid to do that here at the new church, new location, I should say, from where we were at when we were younger. And yeah, it's great. But something I wanted to hop back to. I know that you're talking about faith and leadership and all those kind of things. I want to encourage anybody that's out there at a smaller church to just take things like one step at a time. Don't get overwhelmed by huge visions because back in the day when I went to this, kind of model that I was seeing at a big church, the church in Tulsa at the time was like crazy, like 7 or 8,000 people. It was huge. And the youth group, of course, was massive as well. I mean, you and your wife visited with me and my wife and Christy. We all went down there. That was back before you were married, right? That
Yeah.
was when you guys were just kind of flirting with each other. But anyway, we took a trip down there, and their building was enormous. Like their building was as
Yeah.
large as a large church just for the youth group.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the model I'm looking at. And then I'm looking at what we've got there in Grand Junction, Colorado. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get overwhelmed and try to do that. I'm just going to do the next thing that I think God wants me to do. And one of the key things is don't try to do ministry on your own. That's what I've
Yeah.
learned throughout the years. Don't think that all the good ideas have to come from you. Get people around you that know better than you what's going on. And I know that going into that situation, that church had a rich history of participating in this, for lack of a better term, like a national teen talent competition.
Yeah.
It's called Fine Arts. For those that are in the Assemblies of God, it's called Fine Arts. But outside, it's basically teen talent. And I was okay with drama, but I was certainly not really well versed in a lot of things. And that's actually one of the things I was kicking around for, was who can take this over. And your name actually came up. And so when I first approached you, I had that in mind. I was like, okay, I've got to get Dustin to take over like the drama portion of this, and he can run with it. And you did a great job. We had, I think our Washington D.C. trip, we had like three or two or three dramas that finished in the top 20 in the nation from this little place. But just putting the right people in the right places. Another guy that came to the church that was in school for music, I put him in charge of the worship team, and the worship team flourished. And just your wife was great with organization. She was my admin, and so she was the brains behind the operation.
Yeah.
So putting the right people in the right place is so key. And don't ever think that, oh, I've got to be the man. I've got to come up with all the ideas. I've got to do all that. The idea of never do ministry alone is so true. So I always tried to, if I'm going to do a hospital visit, I wanted to bring somebody with me to the hospital visit, whether it's a youth, someone from the youth group, or you when you were interning with me. That way I was modeling, this is how you do a hospital call, or this is, what you do in this situation. You're always in discipleship mode, like always. Even before somebody accepts Christ, you're actually discipling them just by the way that you live, by the way you talk, by the way you react to things. They're picking up on Christ-like things that they're going to start modeling in the future. So I know that was a big rant. A lot of different things.
That's so good. I think that that's such an important key, because oftentimes when you're given a leadership role, there's this unspoken expectation that you are already ready for the role that you're serving in. And the reality is that is not true. Any good leader can recognize the talented people around them and put them in positions to accomplish the goal together. And so many times, and this is a warning for leaders and even new leaders. So many times we get this attitude and this prideful spirit in us that think, you know what, I can do it better than anybody else. Other people are flaky. I don't want people to see, where I'm weak, all those different things. And so you can start closing yourself off unintentionally to the people that God's actually bringing in around you to help lift you up. And this is something that, you do so well, because what you saw in me, I was thinking that, that I wasn't, God wasn't going to do anything in my life. Not that I was discounting God. It was just, I felt like, my life was going in a different direction. I was working full time at a big company. I was excelling there. I was actually making really good money for a 19, 20-year-old kid. And so, the proposition of walking away from that and stepping into full-time ministry, unpaid ministry, was very scary. But I had your voice, walking with me and saying, you know what, it's going to be okay. And then the Lord confirmed it to me. I remember having a conversation with you and then going to the Lord in prayer, laying down on my face and saying, Lord, I don't know what I have to give you, but whatever I can, it's yours. And I felt
Yeah.
the voice of the Holy Spirit speak to me in that moment and said, give me a year of your life. Give me a year of your life. And so I just said yes. And of course, you had already been, coaching me, discipling me. And it was because of that, I was able to hear that voice of the Lord. And honestly, um, it's been an amazing ride, uh,
Yeah.
with him and seeing all that God has accomplished over the years and through individuals. And, it's just been amazing. So thanks for pointing that out.
Well,
I think that's a great key.
yeah, I want to speak to that for a moment because you actually did something very bold when you stepped out. When I was challenged to kind of give a year of my life, the structure that you're talking about, I think maybe the challenge you're talking about was from an old school of ministry called Master's Commission that I was trained in back in the 90s. And I did a whole year of college, which college, you don't have a job, you're not making money or anything. I was living with my parents and I was kicking around. I was like, oh, this is terrible. I feel like I'm doing nothing. And my uh, mentor at that time, my youth pastor, he was like, well, why don't you try out this thing called Master's Commission? Just give your life, excuse me, focus in on what God wants for your life. Doesn't mean you're going into full-time ministry, but you're going to hear clearly from God during that time. And I can remember, telling you about my experience in Master's Commission, but I had no clue that you were going to make such a bold move. I remember when you told me that you were ready to intern with me, and I was like, okay, great. Let's, what times can you give? And you're like, I'm giving it all. Like when you're here, I'm here. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And when you told me that you like, no, you're committed for a year, you quit your job, I was like, whoa. I was shocked that God had you make that bold step. And I must say, I was kind of overwhelmed at the time. You didn't know this because I put on a brave face, but then I thought, oh my goodness, I've really got to up my game because now I've got Dustin in here and he's going to be watching me like 24/7. Like he's going to be looking at me and like trying to seek my guidance. So I fumbled about with you because you were my first intern. So you were my guinea pig actually of how do I even do this? How do I train somebody in ministry? And you can speak from your experience, but I think for the most part, for me, I was just like, well, this is what I'm doing now. Help me out. Like it was basically kind of that kind of thing. I felt like it was like, I'm going to do this now. Come do it with me. That's what at least from my perspective, that's what it felt like.
Well, I think it was the freedom inside of all of it to be like, okay, um, let's do this together. And you did such a good job with that because I definitely had a grace for it. It's not like I got in there and was like, well, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, so I'm going to get super frustrated. And I think sometimes people step into ministry roles, whether volunteer or a paid position, and your leader doesn't know exactly what your job description is or what your projects are, and so you can have a frustration there. I wasn't frustrated at all. I just was.
Well, that's good.
I knew the Lord had called me to do it, and so, um, when we hit those times of you had things to do, you had, whether studying for messages or whatever, I was like, I can go clean the youth room. Uh, and it's not that we didn't have a cleaner at the church, but I knew that I could do some things ahead of
Yeah.
time that would make it easier on them. And so, where I, where a lot of people would say, well, you're not doing anything. I was like, no, I'm going to fill my time doing this serving. And so
Yeah.
I served not only there, but in other places of the church. I served other, pastors at the church. I remember our music pastor at the time was putting on these huge Easter productions. And so I went and served there and he had me help direct, which was a huge honor. I didn't know what I was doing in that either, but it was one of the most successful outreaches that I've ever been a part of, was doing stuff like that. So the Lord definitely gave me grace, and he gave you grace as well, because, you know, I was a little rough around the edges, and you helped me grow in that. And I think that's what it's all about. And understanding that the people around us, God has put there intentionally. And we're not, it's not meant to, you know, be abrasive if people don't do things the way we do them. But how can we work with people around us uh, to grow the kingdom of heaven here on earth? Because that's really what we're called to do. We're called to harvest, to the
Yeah.
harvest. And so, uh, we're talking souls and discipleship. That's all hands on deck. We don't get to just kind of, do one side and not the other. I mean, if you want to save people, that's amazing. We all need to save people. We need to bring them into the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. But, you have to get your hands dirty with discipleship too, which that's not an easy thing to do. And you do that so well. So thank you.
Oh, well, thanks for the compliments. I think if you're ever in the position to mentor someone or have an intern with you, it's almost like parenting, because if you're a parent, you know that you're just kind of faking it. You're putting on a brave face sometimes, and like, I know what I'm doing. And it's not until now that I'm this old that I realize that my parents were faking it the entire time, right? They were just like, they were prayerfully, they were like, okay, what should we do next? Like it wasn't like I had godly parents, and they did the best that they could. But don't ever think, I don't want anybody to think that they have to have everything figured out, that they have to have this big plan before they bring on somebody to mentor. Because I think mentoring somebody, you should always, as a leader, you should always try to be mentoring somebody in your life. Like that is key. We see that in Jesus's life. We see that in Paul's life. Like all of these key leaders they always have somebody with them that they're pouring into. And I think that that's what we're called to do. And people are going to come in and out of our life. You're not going to pour into a person forever, but it's great to be able to see people that you poured into, pour into others. Like I've just so enjoyed seeing you and Heather flourish in all of your different ministries, and to know that God gave me the grace to be just a little part of that at a time in my life. So yeah, if you're out there and you're just guessing or thinking, should I mentor somebody or should I bring somebody into my inner circle? The answer is yes. Like, yes, that's not anything you should have to pray about. That should be something like, yeah, you should bring somebody into your circle and pour into them. That should be a no-brainer.
Yeah. And, even looking back into that being modeled for me, and now, looking back over the years and seeing everybody that I poured into, and, one of them now is, leading a church, and I'm just like, that's just, God's so cool. Like,
Yeah.
I really don't feel like I'm anybody. Yeah. I get to be a part of, so many amazing things that God's doing. And so, that's really what drives me at the end of the day. Something that you and I always seem to be on the same wavelength with was our humor. And it was kind of from that place of humor that creativity flowed, really. And I still get messages from people over the years, because you and I used to get together on skits, and we would make videos. I mean, had YouTube been around or as big as it was back in 2003, 2002, we probably would
Yeah.
have been YouTube famous.
It would have been
But
viral for sure.
it would have been viral. I mean, we would have the funnest time making the dumbest videos, but they had a little bit of purpose behind them. and they always encourage people to to run to Jesus. But um, even today, people will message me and be like, "I remember when you guys came out with the Level 7 news, and
Yeah.
we would do these ridiculous reports on ridiculous things, and it was just fun." And there, what the Lord has shown me through that is when you can get to a place of joy, and you can look at this thing as, man, this is fun. Serving Jesus is fun. And there's some
Mhm.
things that we can look at and we can just laugh.
Oh
When you
yeah.
can get to that place, there's some creativity that can come out of you. And so it's it's been so fun reflecting on some of those things over the years with former students, former staff, and different things like that. I connected with one of our mutual friends the other day, and we were just laughing about things that he and I had done and that you had done, and it was just it's funny how that sticks with you. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I know you say I made just a little impact. It's been a pretty big impact in so many people. So thank you.
That's
If
good.
if you learned one thing from leadership, I know you shared with, taking one step at a time, not letting the vision. You want a big vision, but you don't want it to overwhelm you. What
Yeah.
if you could give us one leadership nugget? What would that be?
Just the way I've always approached ministry is I've tried to connect with people on like a real level, like an emotional level, where people can relate to me, and whether it's through humor, because I think if you can make somebody laugh, that's a small thing that breaks down walls. That they're going to be like, okay, this guy's not that bad. I can let him talk to me about God for a moment. Because if you're always like serious and like, if you don't turn, you're going to hell, and you've all got this serious facade and like you're all together, that can come off as kind of fake. Um, and I really think that the key to everything is a good balance in the way that you approach your ministry, and that means that you're not, man, this is going to sound weird, but you're not too much on the holiness side of things, um because there's that old phrase, if you could be so heavenly minded that you're of no earthly good.
Hmm.
um and you're not too much on the other side of things, where it's like you're all grace, and it's all like, you're good, I'm good, we're all going to heaven, doesn't matter what you do, God loves you. you know
Yeah.
there's a balance to everything. If you look at the Bible, even though I do not drink alcohol, like the Bible doesn't specifically say don't drink, right? That's weird for me to contend with, because I've seen the devastation of alcohol. I've seen how it's destroyed people's lives, but it doesn't say don't drink. It says don't drink in excess. It also says stuff like, hey, don't eat in excess. Don't do any of these things in excess. And I think we see examples all throughout the Bible of people taking things in excess. Your
Yeah.
Pharisees took the holiness movement in excess, and everything was law and everything was stringent and everything was like, "Ugh." So then Jesus comes along, and he's actually balanced in his approach, but he's so far from this holiness thing that's going on that he looks like he's liberal. He looks like he's over here and like, you're good, we're all good. But if you look at his ministry, he's actually not like that. He's right here in the middle. So I think it's very important for us to always try to say, God, let me have a balanced approach to ministering to people. Let me have enough grace that people can reach you, but let me have enough challenge and holiness inside of me that I'm bringing people closer to you at the same time. There's
Yeah.
got to be that, again, balance to the way that you're approaching ministry. Otherwise, you're always going to replicate the way that you approach things, and you're going to make like little baby zealots, and of no matter what gospel that you're speaking, whatever you're making. So I always try to emphasize that Jesus is going to speak to you on a personal level. He leaves a lot of things in the Bible in the gray area because he wants a relationship to you. I don't
Yeah.
I don't discipline. When my kids were younger, I didn't discipline any of them the same way because they were all different in their personalities. I challenged them in different ways, and God's the same way with me. He knows my weaknesses. He looks at that and says, "Hey, Matt, that's a sin for you." Like, I really believe that God has called me. Go back to the alcohol thing. I really believe God has called me. Hey, I don't want you to drink alcohol. I think
Yeah.
if I do, that I would be sinning. But again, that's a personal conviction. So I'm not going to take that personal conviction and from the podium say drinking alcohol is a sin and you're going to go to hell if you drink alcohol. Because,
Yeah.
you know, if I cross that line and I purposefully indulge in that, then yeah, I'm damaging my relationship with Christ. But that's not something on anybody else. You know, Paul talks about this with meat sacrifice to idols. That for some, hey, if you feel that that's a sin, then don't do it. But for others, if they have the grace to do that, then it's okay for them to indulge in. So as a leader, we really need to make sure that we are not preaching. Get back to the main point I'm trying to make. Don't preach your personal convictions. Preach the gospel. But if God's challenging you, you can demonstrate that. You can say, this is something that God's challenged in my life. Maybe he's challenging you the same way. Just a possibility. But again, when you present those things, don't say that this is thus saith the Lord, because that's how you get into all the old school of, don't go to dances, don't go to movie theaters, don't. My mom never learned how to swim because she grew up in a holiness family, because they called when girls swam with boys at a public pool, it was called mixed bathing. It's crazy. So she couldn't mixed bathe, so she never learned how to swim, which is crazy. But you get all of these stringent rules when convictions turn into thus saith the Lord, and it's for everybody, but it's not.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's good. And our pastor that we served under, he would always talk about the importance of balance. And he would share the example of how when he first came to the church that we were serving at, it was a very emotionally driven church. So, first of all, I want to say, uh, everybody that I know, mostly everybody in my circle, everybody's hungry for revival. And, revival probably means different things to different people. I think that's pretty safe to say, what looks like revival. I was talking with somebody last year, well-known speaker and leader, and he's saying, we talk about revival and we think it looks like this, but what if a revival is just a revival of joy?
Yeah.
What if it's a revival of grace? He's like, these are things that God wants to breathe back into life to the body, but it's not always going to look the same. And so our pastor was saying, when he first came to that church, it was very emotional. They had tissues all over every row. The altars had tissues, and you were kind of expected to cry.
Yeah.
When you went to church, or to be touched. And
the spirit didn't move if you didn't cry. Yeah,
exactly. And so he described it as, it just kind of felt like every Sunday was like a bummer, And so the first thing he did is he took all the tissues out of the sanctuary, and he changed the worship style to be celebratory, because he really felt like the Lord was saying, look, this church is they're in a routine, a religious routine. And, that could be a dangerous place. And so again, bringing the balance back, I think, is so important. So I think that's a great nugget to share with our people watching and listening today. And, as we kind of wrap up, one thing that you we're so good at and still are is just encouraging people uh, to step out in that call. And so when you're thinking about like the next generation and you're thinking about those people, of course, your son, your oldest is in ministry now, and
Mhm.
he's starting out, and I know you guys are just so proud of him. You're proud of all your kids, but if there's something you could say to somebody that's listening or watching and they're getting ready to step out, what would be your advice to them?
Looking back, I would say enjoy the journey, like enjoy where you're at. I and this is kind of a redundant thing to say because I know a lot of people have said this over the years, and as you get older, you look back wistfully and think, "Oh, it was so great back then." But it is true. I really didn't know and realize what God was doing and the impact that was going on until I was far removed from my days here in Grand Junction and seeing everybody there. But really just enjoy every moment, because every experience that you're going to have, whether it's um, exhilarating or heartbreaking, and you and I have both been through like what would be called church hurt, but
Oh
we've
yeah.
come out on the other ends better for it. All of those things add to your experience, and it is true that God works everything to the good for those that love Him and are called according to His purposes. It's true, and um, yeah, every I looking back at every experience of my life, every good experience, every bad experience, I can't imagine a better place that God would have me than where I am right now. It's just amazing.
Well, Matt,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on today. If people want to
Hey,
learn more,
wait, wait,
what's
wait,
up?
wait. Before you wrap up, I
Yeah,
want,
yeah.
I want to, I want to out us just a little bit. If you guys are wanting to see some of our weird humor, go to Facebook, because I actually created a Facebook page
Oh,
for our old
that's
youth
right.
group. Level 7. It's all spelled out one word. Level 7, all spelled out. Look up Level 7, and I believe the profile picture. I don't know if there's any other Level 7s out there, but the profile picture is, I think, like a silver black bar stool that's been stacked. I think that's
Okay.
what it is from our snack bar that we had. But you can look at videos of the Level 7 news that Dustin talked about. You can look at some of our weird skits. Like one of my favorites is "Blondes Have More Fun." You,
Oh man.
or we did an investigative reporting on "Do blondes have more fun than
Yeah.
brunettes?" Yeah, and so we got to see Dustin experience life doing the same things as a blonde and a brunette. And I won't say if blondes have more fun, but you can find out by going to the Level 7 Facebook page and watching some of those videos.
You might get us canceled with because some of those videos. I don't know if they translate to today's culture, but
Yeah.
check them out anyway. And yeah, I hopefully they bring joy to you. Just remember, they were filmed over 20, almost 25 years ago. So
Yes.
technology, but they are very funny. And so, how
Yeah.
else can people get in contact with you? Because I know you lead worship right now at Victory
Yeah.
Life Church, my home church I grew up in. How can they find you?
VLCGV.org. We also have a YouTube page. Yeah, you can go check that out. And I don't know when this is going out, but I'm actually going to be speaking. If you want to see one of my messages, if this goes out after April 6th, you can go back and watch that message. And you can judge whether, I'm funny or not, I guess. And
No
you get to
pressure,
speak
right?
all the time. Like you're always speaking. You don't know this, but I watch your messages quite often.
Oh wow, that's pressure. Yeah, I get to speak a couple times a month.
You do.
So we have two services at our church, and I usually get to do the early service, and so it's good. It is. I'll tell you, it was weird for me preaching every single Sunday when I was leading a campus church versus, preaching once or twice a month. And so I've had to wrap my brain around that, but I feel like I'm starting to finally hit my stride a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's been
Well,
good. Well, that's
I
such
will
an
say
honor to hear
this,
that.
like between the two of us, I think you probably have more experience preaching than I do now of all the
Wow.
years that we've served, because I was a youth pastor for 10 years, but after that, I've been serving in auxiliary roles where I speak just
Yeah.
occasionally, and I'm doing behind the scenes church stuff, leading small groups or graphics or video or any of the other kind of things that I've been doing rather than
Yeah.
speaking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I watch you so I can learn now.
Oh, that's scary. That's scary. Well, that's such an honor, and it's been so fun having you, and thank you for making the time. I know like it was short notice on your part, so thank you so much for
Oh
saying
yeah.
yes. And
I would love to do this again because we really didn't cover a lot of our history together. I know there's lots of other experiences that we've had together. So
mhm.
it'd be fun to hit this up again. I mean, unless I get canceled, if the crowd is like, nah, don't have that guy back. but
No, I
but
mean I only
it,
have
it would
100 subscribers, so we're good. I think
okay.
I think I think we're good. But thanks so much for being on, and of course,
Yeah.
don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, get notified whenever this podcast drops, and we will see you next time on the next Faith and Leadership Unplugged. I want to thank you so much for listening today. If you want to learn more about Speak Hope Ministries, just visit us at speakhope.org. One last thing, if you would, just please hit that subscribe button, leave a comment. It really helps. Thank you so much. God bless you. We'll see you on the next episode.